Hey everyone, Dan at Bushcraft, and my partner, a monster piece of Fatwood. I've done other videos for you guys on Fatwood, but I want to revisit this because out here in the Ochocos, and I would say this applies to the majority of the mountains of the western states. I know some things are different back east, but out here in the west, anytime a tree falls, okay, this is an old fallen tree, and the roots come up out of the ground, the roots of that tree are absolutely filled with the lifeblood of the tree, which is resin. And this thing has been here for years and years, and yet this is solid with resin, solid with pitch. It's the fire starter, it's the gasoline of the forest. And it's such an important resource to know out here because, there have been people throughout history and even in recent years who've got lost in the mountains, who've had resources like this to get a fire, but didn't know that it was a resource, didn't know how to use it or how to find it, and they froze. And if about Fatwood, I'm surrounded by fallen trees. Any direction I go, all the way to the bottom of this valley, I know I've been there, all the way to the top of the highest point up this hill, I've been there. I'm never within more than 100 yards, if even that, of a Fatwood source. The old stumps, the root wads, the fallen logs. And it's just, again, it's such an important resource to know how to recognize and how to use, because it can save your life. It's beautiful summer weather now, but wrong time of year and you get stranded out here and you need fire. There you go. Now, I'm going to move you guys a little closer and give you some tips on this. Okay, first of all, how do I know that this is solid Fatwood? I mean, many people would walk right by this and they would think, this is just old, dead, rotten wood. Well, you can tell that it's not because it's solid. I mean, I am pulling and pulling and there's absolutely no budge, no give, even to a small piece. If this was rotten or even just dry, I'd be able to just snap this. But that's solid. That small of a piece right there is solid. And the reason it's solid is because it's filled with resin. Okay. So the first tip for you guys, the sawdust from sawing that has resin in it. I can smell it. And so if you hold a bandana or whatever you've got with you, your hat even, under that and catch the sawdust, that sawdust will take a spark and get your fire going. That piece of wood that I just sawed, see that dark in there? That's pure resin. Think of the gasoline of the forest. And once you've smelled it, you'll never forget that smell. So I now have fire starter. I can make scrapings, shavings, whatever out of that and get a fire going. Or if I've got something else for tinder, this will burn much longer than a dry piece of wood that would just burn up in a couple of minutes because of that resin in there. So let's get a little bit bigger piece and I'm going to process some Fatwood out of it for you guys. I think I'll take this piece right here. And again, all that sawdust that's coming out will take a spark and we'll get a fire going if you need it. I've done that in other videos for you guys. Okay, there we go. Wow. And again, look at that. See all the dark streaks? All them dark streaks in there are solid resin. And this whole root wad all the way down to the big pieces that are feet around are filled with resin. So once you have some fatwood cut off part of one of those root wads, I went ahead and shortened the other side of it. And again, you can see the resin running all the way through. You can use either your knife or a small hatchet, whichever you prefer, to begin to process this down so that you can use it. So what I prefer to do, to save my knife for lighter duty tasks, I like to use my hatchet. But I am going to go ahead and baton with my hatchet and get some fatwood pieces out of there that I can take with me. Look at that. Beautiful. Wow. So I'll just kind of trim that up a little bit. Take the sides off. Like so. So that's going to give me some pieces that I can take with me, and some pieces that I can start working with right here and now. All I really need is one to get a fire going. So then I'll have a bunch of others to throw in my backpack to take with me. And again, you can use your knife. I just prefer to do heavier jobs with my hatchet, but just to demonstrate. And if I'm trying to make smaller pieces now, say I want to get down here and make some smaller toothpick size pieces, then I'm going to switch over to my knife anyway, so that I can make finer pieces. And that is just fantastic. So then once you got your pieces of fatwood that you want to start your fire with, some extras again maybe you want to take with you. I still got another piece here to process up and take back. You can pick one out that you like. Let's go with, I like this one right here with that. And if your knife has a 90-degree spine, if not, you got a scraper for your ferro rod or something, but having a 90-degree spine on the knife works very well to get your fine scrapings. These will take a spark. So those right there, I want those for the spark. And then once I get a little pile of those, I'm not going to need many. This is a very good piece of fatwood. So that right there, even though that doesn't look like much, I'll take just a little more. That's probably going to be all I need. To get a spark burning. Oh yeah, so that's plenty. That's going to be my spark. That's my igniter. Now, you can use your knife to make some curls and get some bigger stuff. But again, I'm a multi-tool kind of guy. This is the old school multi-tool, the hatchet and the knife. I will switch over to my hatchet and I will use it and pull my wood against the hatchet. There, come off there. There we go. So I'm using my hatchet to get some bigger curls now. I don't know if you guys can see that. They're all landing on this side. So I'm getting some bigger curls with my hatchet. So I have the small stuff, the scrapings to catch my spark. And then I get up here where I got better position. See, I'm getting curls using my hatchet, and it's just easier for me. I know some guys can make their curls easier with the knife. I'm just able to do it easier with the hatchet. And a pile of those gives me some bigger stuff to sustain my flame. So if you had nothing else out here, but hopefully your knife, so we could have done everything with a knife. Preferably you carry a small hatchet and a knife, because that is just the backwoods way. If you go back throughout history to the old mountain men, up through more modern ones like Kephart and Nessmuck, on up to today like Dan and Ochiko Bushcraft, the bushcrafters carry a hatchet and a knife. All right, let's get my ferro rod out here. Okay, and I said I've got those curls to hold the flame a little longer, and then I got the fine little scrapings to try to catch a spark with. Sometimes you just have to work at it a little bit. There we go. All right. Sometimes it's not on the first try, but you know, the spark will catch the right piece, and then there you go. So the little fine scrapings ignited the spark. The fine curls that I made off the hatchet are giving me burn time. And I've got all of this fat wood and one more piece to process to put in my pack now, so I have a resource with me as I travel. So let's go ahead and get that out. So there it is, guys. Processing, using, finding, identifying fat wood up here in the mountains as a survival resource. And as I said, I know I've done videos on the past, and believe me, this will not be the last video, because you know, it's so sad to go to a place, you know, you read about search and rescue, finding someone out here, and to go to that place and see all of the resources that they had, where they could have gotten a fire, where they could have made shelter, but they didn't have the knowledge, they didn't have the know-how. You know, sitting down and leaning up against a stump like this, which is full of fat wood, and freezing with no fire, when they're literally leaning on the source that could have saved their life. So I just think that it's worthwhile from time to time to come back, and if you spend time anywhere in the Mountain West, learn to recognize and identify fat wood. And again, every time a tree falls, those root wads are filled with pitch and resin, and as they dry out, they become a very useful fire source. And as you saw, the way to test it, if you think that's just an old rotten root wad, walk up and start grabbing some limbs. And there's a perfect example. Here's a limb that's laying on the ground. Look at that. It just falls apart in my hand. It's just dried out and it's rotting. But here is the other piece of that root wad, and it's not going to budge. It's not going to budge at all. It's solid because it's got resin in it. So when you grab those root wads and they won't break and you can't budge them, it's because it's resin in there, and saw into it a little bit and you'll see it and you'll smell it. And we went ahead and we processed a piece, because I want to take some back to my, put in my kit with me and put some in my vehicle. But just catching the sawdust with a bandana in your hat with a napkin, whatever, a Kleenex. You can ignite those shavings themselves, and that is a lifesaver. Dan at Ochiko Bushcraft. Hope you guys like this. Take care, everyone.